Hey guys, this is AJ from Age's Adventures, and happy Marvel Monday! Today's fanfic will be, what if Mysterio didn't reveal Spider-Man's identity? So let's get on with this. It was a tense moment as Spider-Man faced off against Mysterio, the Master of Illusion. The two stood on opposite sides of a dark and abandoned warehouse, their eyes locked in a deadly stare. Mysterio spoke first, his voice dripping with arrogance. "So, Spider-Man, we meet again. Or should I say, Peter Parker," he said, a sinister grin spreading across his face. Spider-Man teased, ready. Spider-Man tensed up, ready for a fight. "What are you talking about, Mysterio? You don't know anything about me." "Oh, but I do," Mysterio said, chuckling softly. You see, I've been doing some digging, and I've uncovered your little secret. You're not just Spider-Man, are you? You're Peter Parker, the boy wonder of the Daily Bugle. Spider-Man's heart raced as he tried to come up with a response. He couldn't let Mysterio reveal his true identity to the world. "You're lying," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Mysterio laughed again, clearly enjoying the moment. "Oh, I wish I was. But I have proof, my friend. And if you don't do exactly what I say, I'll make sure the whole world knows who you are, knows your secret." Spider-Man knew he had to play along, at least for now. He couldn't let Mysterio win. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice steady. Mysterio leaned in closer, his eyes gleaming with malice. "I want you to steal something for me, something very valuable. And if you don't, let's just say I'll be calling up my friends in the media." Spider-Man gritted his teeth, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had to stop Mysterio, no matter the cost. But he couldn't let his secret slip. "Fine," he said, his voice cold. "What do you want me to steal?" And so, the two continued their deadly dance, Mysterio holding all the cards, and Spider-Man doing his best to stay one step ahead. But even in the midst of the chaos, Spider-Man knew that his secret was safe, at least for now. What would Beck do after Peter stole the cards and returned them to him? After Peter successfully stole the cards and returned them to Mysterio, Beck stood with his arms crossed, a smug expression on his face. "Ah, Spider-Man, I must admit, I'm impressed," Beck said, his voice dripping with false praise. "You're not as foolish as I thought. You managed to steal those cards right under their noses." Peter bristled, the condescension in Beck's voice. "What do you want from me now?" he asked, his tone curt. Beck's expression turned serious. "I want you to join me, Spider-Man," he said. "I could use someone like you on my team. We could do great things together." Peter recoiled the suggestion. "I'll never join you, Mysterio, not after what you've done," he said, his voice firm. Mysterio shrugged, his smug grin returning. "Suit yourself, but know this, I always get what I want, and sooner or later, you'll realize that you need me more than I need you." With that, Beck turned on his heel and strode away, disappearing into the shadows. Peter watched him go, feeling a sense of unease wash over him. He knew that Beck wasn't finished with him yet, and that their paths would cross again sooner or later. But for now, he had the satisfaction of knowing that he had outsmarted Mysterio and had kept his secret identity safe for another day. Would MJ, what would MJ, Ned, May, and Happy do after they learned about the cards Peter stole for Beck? When MJ, Ned, May, and Happy learned about the cards that Peter stole for Beck, they were all shocked and concerned. "What were you thinking, Peter?" MJ exclaimed, her voice rising. "How could you get involved with someone like Mysterio?" Ned looked equally worried. "Dude, you could have gotten hurt," he said, his brow furrowed. "Beck is dangerous." May was visibly upset. "I can't believe this, Peter," she said, shaking her head. "You know better than to get mixed up with criminals." Happy was more pragmatic. "We need to focus on damage control," he said, his voice calm. "If Beck has those cards, he could use them for all sorts of nefarious purposes." Peter hung his head, feeling guilty and ashamed. "I know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I messed up. I was trying to do the right thing, but I guess I just made things worse." MJ put a comforting hand on Peter's shoulder. "It's okay," she said, her voice softening. "We'll figure this out together." Ned nodded in agreement. "Yeah, we're a team, Peter," he said. "We'll get through this." May smiled weakly. "We'll always be here for you, Peter," she said, her voice full of love and concern. And so, the group put their heads together and began to formulate a plan. They knew that Beck was dangerous, but they also knew that they had each other's backs. With determination and courage, they set out to right the wrongs that Peter had unwittingly set in motion, and to keep their community safe from the threat of Mysterio and his evil schemes. What would Happy and Peter do about the cards that Mysterio had? After learning about the cards that Mysterio had obtained from Peter, Happy and Peter knew that they had to take action. They couldn't let Beck use the cards for his own nefarious purposes. "We have to get those cards back," Peter said, his voice firm. "If Beck has access to that information, he could use it to hurt a lot of people." Happy nodded in agreement. "I'll make some calls and see what I can find out about Beck's whereabouts," he said. "In the meantime, you need to stay focused and stay safe, Peter." Peter nodded, feeling a sense of determination wash over him. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said, his voice steady. Over the next few days, Happy and Peter worked tirelessly to track down Beck and the stolen cards. They combed through surveillance footage, hacked into databases, and interviewed informants, all in an effort to find the elusive criminal mastermind. Finally, they got a break. One of Happy's contacts tipped him off about a warehouse on the outskirts of the city where Beck was rumored to be hiding out. "We need to move fast," Happy said, his voice urgent. "We don't know what kind of defenses he has set up." Peter nodded, feeling a sense of apprehension building in his chest. But he knew that they had to act quickly before Beck could use the cards to cause any more damage. Together, they made their way to the warehouse, carefully navigating the darkened corridors and hidden passages. When they finally found Beck, he was surrounded by his cronies, grinning with his usual air of smug self-satisfaction. "Well, well, well," Beck said, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Look who decided to drop by." Peter stepped forward, his fists clenched. "We're here for the cards," he said, his voice firm. Beck chuckled, his smile growing wider. "And why, pray tell, Should I give them to you? He asked. Peter didn't hesitate. With a swift movement, he launched himself at Beck, his Spider-Man skills on full display. Happy followed close behind, taking on Beck's henchmen with a fierce determination. In the end, they emerged victorious, with the stolen cards safely in their possession. Peter and Happy made their way back to their safe house, feeling a sense of relief and triumph wash over them. "We did it," Peter said, his voice filled with pride. Happy smiled wryly. We make a pretty good team," he said. And with that, they settled down to plan their next move, knowing that they had protected their community from the threat of Mysterio and his evil schemes. Would Peter and Happy take back to the raft? After recovering the stolen cards from Mysterio's hideout, Peter and Happy were faced with a decision about what to do with the defeated criminal mastermind. "We can't just let him go," Peter said, his voice firm. "He's too dangerous. He'll just go back to his old ways." Happy nodded in agreement. "You're right," he said. "We need to turn him over to the authorities." Peter thought for a moment, then spoke up. "But the police won't be able to hold him for long," he said. "He's too smart, too cunning. He'll find a way to escape." Happy sighed. "I know," he said. "But we can't just take the law into our own hands, Peter. We have to do things by the book." Peter's expression grew determined. "Then we'll take him to the raft," he said, referring to the maximum security prison for superpowered criminals. Happy looked at Peter for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "But we need to be careful. We can't let Beck get the upper hand." And so, Peter and Happy loaded Mysterio into their van, securing him with restraints and ensuring that he couldn't escape. They drove through the darkened streets of the city, their eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. When they finally arrived at the raft, they were met by a group of heavily armed guards who scrutinized them carefully before allowing them to enter. Inside the prison, the air was thick with tension and danger. Peter and Happy made their way through the winding corridors, their eyes scanning the cells for any sign of trouble. Finally, they arrived at the cell that had been prepared for Mysterio. They unlocked the door and pushed him inside, watching as he glared at them with malice and anger. "You'll regret this," Beck spat, his eyes narrowing. "I'll find a way out of here, mark my words." Peter and Happy exchanged a grim look, then turned to leave. As they walked back through the corridors of the raft, they knew that they had done the right thing, but they also knew that they had made a powerful enemy. "We'll have to keep an eye on him," Peter said, his voice low. "He won't rest until he finds a way to escape." Happy nodded in agreement. "We'll be ready for him," he said. "We've faced worse than Mysterio before." And with that, they made their way back to the van, their hearts heavy with the weight of the battle they had just fought. Would Jameson call for Spider-Man's arrest after the cards he stole from Beck? After the news broke that Spider-Man had stolen classified government documents from Mysterio, J. Jonah Jameson was quick to denounce the young superhero on his popular news program. "Spider-Man has gone too far this time," Jameson bellowed, his face red with rage. "He's betrayed our trust and endangered the safety of our country. He needs to be brought to justice." As the days passed, Jameson continued to use his platform to call for Spider-Man's arrest, claiming that the web slinger was a menace to society and needed to be taken off the streets. Meanwhile, Peter Parker was consumed with guilt over his actions. He knew that what he had done was wrong, but he also knew that he had been tricked by Mysterio, who had manipulated him into stealing the cards. Peter's friends and family tried to reassure him that he had done the right thing by returning the stolen documents and bringing Mysterio to justice. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he had let everyone down. Then, one day, Peter was walking through the streets of New York. As Peter was walking through the streets of New York, he heard a loud commotion coming from a nearby alley. He rushed over to investigate and saw a group of armed robbers holding up a convenience store. Without hesitation, Peter leapt into action, donning his Spider-Man costume and swinging into the fray. He quickly subdued the robbers and turned them over to the police, earning the gratitude of the store owner and the admiration of a small crowd that had gathered to watch. As Peter swung away from the scene, he knew he couldn't help but wonder if he would ever be able to redeem himself in the eyes of the public. But he knew that he would never stop fighting for what was right, no matter how difficult or thankless the task might be. Would the police arrest Spider-Man for stealing government documents for Beck? If the police were to learn that Spider-Man had stolen government documents from Mysterio, they would undoubtedly launch an investigation into the matter. However, the outcome of that investigation would depend on a number of factors. First and foremost, the police would need to determine whether or not Spider-Man had acted of his own accord or if he had been manipulated by Mysterio. If they were able to prove that Mysterio had tricked Spider-Man into stealing the documents, then Spider-Man might be able to avoid criminal charges. However, if the police believed that Spider-Man had acted of his own free will, then he would likely face charges of theft and espionage. The fact that the stolen documents were classified government materials would only compound the severity of the charges. If Spider-Man were to be arrested, he would likely face a trial in which his actions would be scrutinized by both the prosecution and the defense. The outcome of that trial would depend on a number of factors, including the evidence presented, the skill of his legal team, and the public opinion of Spider-Man. Throughout the process, Peter Parker would likely struggle with feelings of guilt and remorse over his actions. He would know that what he had done was wrong, but he would also feel that he had been manipulated by Mysterio. In the end, whether or not Spider-Man would be arrested for stealing government documents would depend on the nuances of the legal system and the interpretation of the evidence presented. However, it is clear that the consequences of his actions would be severe and would have a long-lasting impact on his reputation and standing in the eyes of the public. How would Spider-Man keep his identity a secret while being arrested? If Spider-Man were to be arrested, he would face the daunting task of keeping his true identity a secret from the public. This would be no easy feat, as he would be in police custody and would be subject to questioning and scrutiny by law enforcement officials. To maintain his secret identity, Spider-Man would have to rely on his quick thinking and his ability to improvise on the fly. He would need to be careful not to reveal any personal information or give away any clues that could be used to identify him. As the police led him away in handcuffs, Spider-Man would be would keep his head down and avoid making eye contact with anyone. He would stay silent and only speak when spoken to, using a natural tone of voice to avoid giving away any hints about his true identity. If the police were to ask Spider-Man or to ask for his name, Spider-Man would likely provide a fake name and try to sound as convincing as possible. For example, he might say something like, "My name is Peter Johnson, sir. I'm just an ordinary citizen who was trying to do the right thing." Throughout the arrest process, Spider-Man would remain calm and composed, doing his best to blend in with the other suspects and avoid drawing attention to himself. He would be mindful of his body language and facial expressions, and would avoid making any sudden movements or gestures that could give him away. Despite the difficulty of the situation, Spider-Man would remain focused on his ultimate goal, protecting his identity and preserving his freedom. With his wits and his spider sense, he would do his best to outsmart the police and keep his secrets safe. Would the police throw Spider-Man in jail? If Spider-Man were to be arrested for stealing government documents, he would likely face a court hearing where a judge would decide whether he would be held in jail or released on bail. During the hearing, the prosecution would present evidence of Spider-Man's involvement in the theft and argue that he posed a flight risk to and a danger to the community. The defense would argue that Spider-Man had acted under duress, or that he had been manipulated by Mysterio, and would present evidence to support their case. Ultimately, the decision of whether to hold Spider-Man in jail or release him on bail would be up to the judge. If the judge determined that Spider-Man was a flight risk or a danger to the community, he might be held in jail until his trial. If Spider-Man were to be placed in jail, he would likely face a difficult time. As a superhero, he would be a high-profile target for other inmates and could face harassment or violence. He would also be cut off from his support system in his superhero duties, leaving him feeling isolated and vulnerable. Throughout the process, Spider-Man would remain focused on his goal of proving his innocence and protecting his identity. He would likely work closely with his legal team to build a strong defense, and would likely continue to use his spider sense and his other abilities to gather information and stay one step ahead of his enemies. Ultimately, the fate of Spider-Man would rest in the hands of the justice system. Whether he would be found guilty or innocent, and whether he would be released or imprisoned, would depend on the outcome of his trial and the decisions of the judge and jury. How would Spider-Man convince the judge to why he stole the government information? If Spider-Man were to be put on trial for stealing government information, he would have to convince the judge and jury of his motives and reasons for doing so. To do this, he would need to present a compelling defense that explained why he had acted as he did and why he believed it was necessary. When given the chance to speak, Spider-Man would address the court in a calm and managed tone, carefully choosing his words and avoiding any inflammatory or accusatory language. Your Honor, I know that what I did was wrong, and I take full responsibility for my actions. He might begin, but I did what I did for a reason. I believed that the information I stole was being used for nefarious purposes, and that it was my duty as a hero to stop it. He would then explain in detail the events that led to steal that led him to steal the information, describing how he had discovered Mysterio's true motives and realized that the information he had been given was being used to manipulate public opinion and sow discord. I know that I had to act fast and to stop Mysterio and prevent him from causing any more harm. He would continue. So I took matters into my own hands and stole the information. I knew that what I was doing was risky, but I believed that I was doing the right thing. Spider-Man would then present any evidence he had gathered to support his case, such as recordings of Mysterio's conversations or other documents that showed the extent of his deception. Throughout his defense, Spider-Man would likely remain respectful and cooperative, acknowledging his wrongdoing while also making a strong case for his motives and intentions. He would appeal to the judge and jury's sense of justice and fairness, emphasizing that he had acted out of a desire to protect the public and uphold the law. Ultimately, whether Spider-Man's defense would be successful would depend on the judge or jury's interpretation of the evidence and their willingness to accept his explanation for his actions. But by presenting a strong and compelling defense, Spider-Man would stand the best chance of convincing them of his innocence and avoiding conviction. How would MJ, Ned, May, and Happy react to Peter being arrested? When MJ, Ned, May, and Happy heard that Peter had been arrested for stealing government documents, they would likely be shocked and upset. They would immediately want to know more about the situation and how they could help. What? Peter's been arrested? What for? MJ would exclaim, her eyes widening in disbelief. I don't know all the details yet, but it looks like he's been accused of stealing classified government documents, Happy would explain, looking grave. Ned's face would turn pale. This can't be happening. We have to do something to help him, he would say, his voice trembling. May would look pained and worried. Oh no, poor Peter. He must be so scared right now, she would murmur, wringing her hands. The group would immediately begin brainstorming ways to help Peter, discussing whether they should hire a lawyer, reach out to other heroes, or try to gather evidence to support his case. We need to get him out of there as soon as possible, Happy would say firmly. I'll see what I can do to expedite the legal process and get him released on bail. MJ would nod, determined. And we need to prove his innocence. We can't let him take the fall for something he didn't do. Ned would wipe his eyes and nod resolutely. Right. We'll do whatever it takes to clear his name and get him out of this mess. May would put a hand on Ned's shoulder. We'll get through this together. Peter's a strong and brave young man. He'll be okay, she would say reassuringly. The group would then start putting their plans into action, working tirelessly to support Peter and help him through this difficult time. Would Happy go and talk to the police about Spider-Man being arrested without revealing Spider-Man's identity? As an experienced and well-connected businessman, Happy Hogan would know that it was important to act quickly and strategically in order to help Peter Parker without revealing his secret identity as Spider-Man. After learning that Peter Parker had been arrested for stealing government documents, Happy would immediately spring into action, making phone calls and arranging meetings in an effort to expedite the legal process and clear Peter's name. On the One of the first things Happy would do is reach out to the police department and attempt to speak with the officer in charge of Peter's case. He would do his best to maintain a professional demeanor and avoid revealing any information that might compromise Peter's secret identity. "Excuse me, officer. I'm here to inquire about the arrest of a young man named Peter Parker. I understand that he's been accused of stealing classified government documents," Happy might say, approaching the desk at the police station. The officer would look up from his computer screen, eyeing Happy warily. "I'm afraid I can't discuss an ongoing investigation with a civilian, sir," he would say curtly. Happy would nod understandingly. "Of course, I completely understand, but I was hoping to offer my assistance in any way I can. I represent a private organization that is very interested in ensuring that justice is served and that innocent people aren't unfairly accused." The officer would raise an eyebrow. "And what organization is that, exactly?" Happy would smile enigmatically. "I'm afraid I'm not at liberty to say, but I can assure you that we have access to some of the best legal and investigative resources in the country, and that we're committed to ensuring that this case is handled fairly and impartially." The officer would consider this for a moment, then nod slowly. "Well, I appreciate your offer, sir. I'll make note of it in the file, but I should warn you, this is a very sensitive case, and we're not going to let anyone interfere with our investigation." Happy would nod, unfazed. "I understand completely. I'm simply here to offer my assistance and support in any way I can. Please don't hesitate to contact me if you need anything." With that, Happy would turn and leave the police station, confident that he had made a good impression and that he had taken the first step towards helping Peter Parker without compromising his secret identity as Spider-Man. Would the police let Peter free after talking with Happy? Happy's conversation with the police would be just the first step in a long and complex legal process, and it would likely take more than just a single phone call to secure Peter's release from custody. The officer would take note of Happy's offer of assistance, but he would be cautious and skeptical, as the investigation into the theft of government documents would still be ongoing. However, Happy would not give up easily. He would continue to use his connections and resources to gather information about the case and to present evidence that would exonerate Peter and prove that he had been acting under duress when he stole the documents for Quentin Beck. In the meantime, Peter would remain in custody, trying to maintain a low profile and avoid revealing his secret identity as Spider-Man to anyone else in the jail. As the days went by, Happy would continue to work behind the scenes, gathering information, taking to lawyers, and putting pressure on the police department to release Peter. Finally, after several tense and stressful days, Happy would receive a phone call from the police department informing him that Peter was being released from custody and that all charges against him were being dropped. "Mr. Hogan, this is Officer Johnson from the police department. I wanted to let you know that we've decided to release Peter Parker from custody and that all charges against him have been dropped." Happy would breathe a sigh of relief. That's great news, Officer Johnson. Thank you for letting me know. Can you tell me what changed your mind? There would be a moment of hesitation on the other end of the line. Well, I'm not at liberty to discuss the details of an ongoing investigation, but I can tell you that we received some new information that led us to reconsider our position. Happy would nod understandingly. I see. Well, thank you for your cooperation. I'll make sure to pass along the good news to Peter and his family. With that, Happy would hang up the phone and with feeling a sense of relief and satisfaction that he had been able to help Peter without compromising his secret identity as Spider-Man. Alright guys, just 4 more left. How would Jameson react to Spider-Man being free from jail? When J. Jonah Jameson hears the news of that Spider-Man has been released from jail, he would be furious. He would see it as a sign of corruption in the police department and would double down on his campaign to expose Spider-Man as a menace to society. In his next broadcast, Jameson would rant and rave about the injustice of Spider-Man's release, accusing the police of being in cahoots with the web-slinger. Listen up, people. This is an outrage. Spider-Man has been let off scot-free, despite stealing classified government documents. It's clear that the police department is in bed with this criminal, and they're willing to let him get away with anything. But mark my words, folks, it won't be the end of it. This won't be the end of it. We will continue to expose Spider-Man for the menace he is, and we will not rest until he is brought to justice. As Jameson's tirade continues, he would be interrupted by a phone call from a mysterious source. The caller would offer Jameson new information about Spider-Man's involvement in the theft of the government documents, promising to provide evidence that would prove Spider-Man's guilt beyond a shadow of doubt. Jameson would be intrigued and would agree to meet with the caller in person. However, when he arrived at the designated location, he would find that he's been set up and that the evidence he's been given is fake. The realization that he's been played would infuriate Jameson even further, and he would vow to redouble his efforts to take down Spider-Man, no matter what it takes. Would Jameson be successful in taking down Spider-Man? It's difficult to say whether Jameson would be successful in taking down Spider-Man, as the web-slinger has proven to be a wily and resourceful opponent. Despite Jameson's best efforts to expose Spider-Man as a menace to society, many people in New York would still see the web-slinger as a hero, thanks to his numerous acts of heroism and selflessness. As Jameson's campaign against Spider-Man continues, he would face mounting opposition from the public, who would begin to see him as a paranoid and obsessive figure. At the same time, Spider-Man would continue to fight against crime and protect the citizens of New York, earning the admiration and respect of many people in the city. In the end, it's likely that Jameson's efforts to take down Spider-Man would ultimately be unsuccessful, as the web-slinger's reputation and popularity would prove too strong to overcome. However, Jameson's relentless pursuit of Spider-Man would serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of allowing one's personal vendettas to consume them, and would remind people of the importance of seeking truth and pursuing justice in a responsible and measured way. Would Jameson stop being mean to Spider-Man and tell him he's been set up and apologize to him? It's possible that Jameson could eventually come to realize that his campaign against Spider-Man was misguided and that he had been manipulated by outside forces into pursuing the web slinger relentlessly. After much soul-searching, Jameson might come to the conclusion that he had been wrong about Spider-Man all along, and that the web slinger was, in fact, a hero who had saved countless lives and made the city a safer place. In such a scenario, Jameson might seek out Spider-Man in person and offer him a heartfelt apology for the way he had treated him in the past. "Spider-Man, I owe you an apology," Jameson might say. "I've been wrong about you all this time, and I let my own biases and prejudices cloud my judgment. I should have recognized the good you've done for this city, and I'm sorry for the way I've treated you." Spider-Man might be surprised by Jameson's change of heart, but would likely accept his apology graciously, recognizing that everyone is capable of making mistakes. "Apology accepted, Mr. Jameson," Spider-Man might reply. "I'm just glad that you've come to see the truth about me, and that we can move forward from here." With that, Jameson and Spider-Man might shake hands, signaling the beginning of a new era of understanding and cooperation between the two unlikely allies. Would Spider-Man take down the person who had hired Jameson to take him down? It's possible that Spider-Man might attempt to track down the person who had hired Jameson to take him down in order to put a stop to their nefarious plans and prevent them from causing further harm. However, given the complex nature of the situation, it's likely that Spider-Man would proceed with caution, taking care not to reveal his identity or compromise his own safety in the process. After conducting some investigation, Spider-Man might discover that the person who had hired Jameson was actually a powerful and influential figure within the city's political or business circles. Someone who, with a vested interest in maintaining a status quo and preventing any outside interference in their affairs. Determined to bring this person to justice, Spider-Man might devise a plan to expose their wrongdoing and bring them to light, using his powers and resources to outmaneuver them at every turn. When he finally confronts the person who had hired Jameson, Spider-Man might deliver a stern warning, letting them know that their actions have consequences and that they will be held accountable for their misdeeds. "I know what you've been up to, and I'm not going to let you get away with it," Spider-Man might say. "You may have thought that you could use Jameson to take me down, but you were wrong. I won't let you or anyone else threaten the safety and security of this city." With that, Spider-Man might apprehend the person and turn them over to the authorities, confident that he had done his part to protect the city and bring justice to those who seek it to do it harm. Alright, that's the end of my fanfic, so right now I'll do my closing and say bye. Make sure to like, comment in the discussion tab, and subscribe now. We'll see you all next time. Bye!